Hey, Mom.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm good. It's kind of getting dark out, and I was going to get a bunch of planting done, and it's not going to happen.
Well, it did put a bit of a damper on things that it started to rain. So, yeah, I know I
That's
planned on
kind of
getting more done in the garden today too, but you can only do what you can do.
yeah. I get exactly.
So, but we can talk about gardening, can't we?
Yep, we can talk about it. Talk is cheap.
It is cheap, but it's still fun. So, you
Uh,
are an expert gardener. You have been gardening for years and years and years.
I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I'm an expert at trial and error. I'm an expert.
Well,
Um,
you've been
you
doing
know,
trial and error for 100 years. So I would say that you
mhm.
have the experience necessary to consider yourself an expert.
Well, like I said, I would never when I talk to what are they called, the experienced gardeners or whatever. What
Master
are they called?
gardeners,
Master
people
gardeners.
have taken
Mm,
classes. Yeah.
sure, and I mean, they are familiar with, both the names, the common name and the eccentric name of all the flowers and stuff
The
like that,
scientific name.
right? And of course, with around here, you really don't close by in Beaver Dam, I don't find a lot of the very different kinds of flowers. You have to kind of
Right.
go to other towns or in a catalog. And but I just do the trial and error. That's how I learned.
So today we're going to talk about gardening and why we like to garden. And we're going to specifically focus on gardening and mental health. And I think it's something that you taught me. And just then once I started gardening, I really recognized the benefits of gardening to my mental health. And
Mhm.
there are so many ways that it helps me. But let's start at the beginning, shall we?
Okay.
I remember back when we lived in our first house,
Right.
and I remember you spent so much money and you planted all annuals.
Right.
You must have planted hundreds of annuals.
Um, it seemed like a lot, but we lived in a new house, and we didn't have a lot of trees, so we had 100% sun. And the back of the house is where I did the planting. That faced west, so that definitely had a hot sun, and I could grow any annual, and they just blossomed and bloomed and grew. And then we moved into this house, and everything has turned around, and now I can't grow any sunflowers or, flowers that like sun. So now I have to do a whole shade flower thing. So I've had to
Yeah.
learn totally different ways of gardening.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
this way is not as colorful as and if you have, flowers that like the sun, but it's equally as fun.
You are on intimate first name basis with impatiens, right?
Impatiens, begonias, hostas, yeah, all those lungwort, yeah, all those things that require shade. Um, I get a little bit more sun now because we've had a couple trees cut down, but we still face north, and we, still have big trees in the back where I do a
Hmm.
lot of planting. So yes, I have to do shade flowers. And on my front porch, I have to do shade flowers because that, of course, faces north. So
Lucky you, right?
exactly, because you don't always find the colors you want in shade flowers.
Oh yeah, you're much more limited. Exactly.
Mhm. Right.
Huh. So one of the things that I was doing when I was looking for stuff to talk about is I found some really fun quotes.
Mhm.
And one of the first quotes I found was, "In spring, at the end of the day, you should smell like dirt." That's a quote by Margaret Atwood. Atwood. And I thought that just totally fills me with peace. I love that smell at the end of the day when you have been working hard, you've been in the garden. Um, And there's this body exhaustion feeling that goes along with it too, that feels so satisfying. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do between dirt and off. We always tease that I always smell like off. That's my summer perfume. Because when you have shade, you also have lots of mosquitoes.
You
So
do, you do.
I actually have found that if I put off on and then spray yard guard in the area that I'm guard, yeah, so I have a few chemicals going on, but there's nothing like the smell of fresh dirt. It's kind of
Mm,
like it's like mowing the lawn, that smell, and you go into a greenhouse, and what do you smell? You smell the dirt and the flowers, of course,
yeah,
but when you water your plants, and what do you smell? You smell dirt. It's such a
yes.
good fresh smell, and I find that I can be kind of down or lazy feeling, and the minute I go outside, all of a sudden, you get this energy, and you
Mhm.
just it just kind of revives you.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, one of the philosophical problems I have with that quote is a friend of mine, Tracy, her husband is an agronomist, I think he is. He works with seeds and farmers. And one of the things she told me was that um, dirt is under your fingernails, soil is what's in the garden.
oh.
And I was like, okay, so that quote, talking about, you should smell like dirt, you should smell like soil. But I don't know, it just doesn't have the same ring to it, does it?
No, no, it doesn't. It doesn't sound digging deep and getting dirty.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's too formal of a word for what you're really doing.
So have you been out in the garden planting your stuff yet? Have you been weeding and playing out there or not so much?
Actually, I've been purchasing flowers more than anything.
The
Um,
other fun thing to do.
yes, that's all that's kind of like buying yarn to make a sweater and then never get the sweater made. That doesn't happen with plants though, because you paid lots of money for them, and if you don't plant
Mhm.
them, they're not gonna grow, and that is an immediate feeling of frustration and loss.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah, but I like to buy what I need up front and have it all there so that I can sit down and play. I do not like to have a couple things and go, well, now I need this and now I need that, and then have to go out and find it or go get it. I want everything right there with me at my fingertips so I can go, you know, I can be creative. I want to create different colors in different places, and I want my choice to be right in front of me. So I know a lot of people will do it in parts. I think you do it in parts and I don't. I mean, if you come into where I have my plants, you go, "Holy cow, what have you done?" There's so much, but it really is
What
not.
greenhouse have you bought?
Yeah, exactly. But, yeah, so I have to have all my stuff there, and then I can
You
sit
are
down.
crazy. And see, that is totally overwhelming to me. I feel like I'm able to trick myself a little bit on how much I spend at the garden center by doing it in bits and pieces. So, yeah. So, first of all, I bought a few foundation plants, some spikes, some uh, asparagus ferns, just some basics. And right when I got home, I mean, literally within 24 hours, those things were all planted up. So the three big pots out in my front yard, they're similar. They have similar flowers or many of the same flowers. And when I come home, I plant those pieces right away.
Mm.
And I leave space for the things that are missing. And it's
Yeah,
like, okay, so this year I'm doing more yellows in the front, along with some coral, a coral gerbera daisy, and coral impatiens.
mm,
Plus, last year I took the three hanging red geraniums and I put them down in that cold room down the basement, and
mhm.
they lived.
Oh, yeah.
And so those are right now on the front porch and they're looking pretty good. I mean, they're not all filled out yet, but they look amazing.
You have to keep them trimmed, and they will. They'll come back. That's really a fun thing to do if you have the room.
Mhm.
Um, or the
Now I
place to
did
do it.
I had a 4th one that was in a big metal pot out in the garden, and I took that out and I put it in a 5-gallon bucket and put that in the same place. It did not
No, I
it
think
did
it's kind
not
of like an
save.
it almost has to hibernate. That's probably not the right word, but,
But they were so similarly saved. I mean, the 3 hanging ones, I didn't remove from their pots. They were in plastic
yeah.
pots. The 4th one, I put in a 5-gallon bucket. It's a plastic pot, right?
Mm,
But there was air around the dirt. It wasn't tight fitting like the hanging pots were.
okay.
Maybe that was
Well,
something to
I
do
thought
with
you
it.
could actually take them out by the roots and everything, and
I've
if I
tried that and they've dried out, another time I did it and they got all moldy.
oh, really? Did you put them in a plastic bag? I've also heard if you put them in a plastic bag in a cool room, that then you bring them out and you plant them, that they'll come back. No, I've
Okay.
never tried it because I've never had a basement or something where I've been
That
able
was
to do
cool
it.
enough.
Yeah,
Right.
without
Mhm.
freezing. You don't wanna freeze them, so,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
So it's fun to
so
do it.
it is fun, and, when you're in midlife, I think playing around with that is something that it's fun, it's play, and we've been talking a lot about that as Sidetrack Sisters, about what are you passionate about? What do you have fun with? How can you incorporate fun and joy into your life? And I think both you and I are able to do that with planting in the spring.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Have you always been able to do that? Or is that something where did that come from for you?
I had an uncle, my father's brother, who was an absolute fanatic on plants and flowers, and his wife came from Australia and was a partner in crime with him. They have such beautiful flowers and stuff there, but he had always been very interested in planting and stuff, and when he lived at home, he did, like, a fish pond and, so he was always very into that, and
Yep.
he just kinda just got me really interested in it. I remember at our first house, I remember the first
Mhm.
flowers I ever had, and I actually had the nursery put them together, which absolutely makes me laugh. They were 2, like, redwood containers, and we're talking, like, a foot across, that sat on the front porch, and they had red geraniums in them. And I mean, I didn't know how to do it. I actually had the nursery plant them in those buckets. Can you imagine? And I remember being so upset because you were, like, 2 or 3 years old and had gone outside, and you had picked me a bouquet, and you had picked all those geraniums, and I remember I was so upset because I thought they'd never come back, and of course they did, but that was my first experience with planting, and I guess I progressed from that point on. Never have I ever had the nursery plant my flowers again. Can you
And I
imagine?
remember those redwood pots that you
Yeah,
used.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
those were very, trendy, in the early
Mhm.
'70s, late
Yeah, and
'60s?
it would be late six yeah, it would be in the late 60s because you were, I'd say
Okay.
3 uh-huh, and, and because I had it was a very sunny area on the front porch, it
Mhm.
faced east because the back faced west. Another thing that I found really interesting when I lived on in the other house was there was a lady that built a house behind us, and she had the most beautiful, beautiful flowers, and she did nothing but plant seeds, and she said she was going to show me what she did, but she passed away before she could show me, and she
Oh.
had gorgeous flowers, and here I'd spent all this money, on plants, but she did nothing but seeds, and, so it'd be fun to just try that sometime.
Right
Maybe
now,
it's
I mean, Craig and I have I grow the tomato plants, the pepper plants, and the
but
coleus.
she didn't do them inside, though. She put seeds in the ground. I mean, it was like it was not, pre-planted.
I would pull them all out like weeds.
Yeah, but
Totally,
they're so pretty,
it wouldn't work
and
for
I
me at all.
And I'd always say to her, "Oh, your flowers are so pretty." They were equally as pretty as mine, And she'd say, "Well, they're all seeds." And I'm thinking of the money I could save by buying seeds, you know? So,
Mhm, mhm,
I'll have to try
exactly.
that spot, but I'm not willing to give up a spot for trial and error right now. Although
Oh,
I do in my garden right now, I do have just a few thousand ferns, and they come up double every year, even though I dig out, I'd say 200 every year and literally throw them away. And it's such a shame because
mhm.
they are beautiful until they take over your world and that's all you've got are ferns. And yeah, so that's my trauma
Your
of every year.
your nemesis, your yeah, exactly,
Mm,
your struggle. You've always had something that has given you a run for your money. It used to be those garden flocks that had taken over the world.
mhm.
And you know, I learned from you. A few years ago, I planted some gooseneck loosestrife, and just a little clump of it. And then, like 2 years later, I read somewhere that it wasn't invasive and it was really hard to control. And I'm like, pshaw, not in my garden. And the next year, it was. I mean, I have many large gardens. It had spread into 10 foot, 10 feet
There's a lot
big.
of plants that do that. There's a
And you
spring.
know what I did? I pulled out every single plant. And this year, it's coming up again. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull out every single plant. Um, because yeah, you don't let something invasive. At the other house, I have those were they buttercups?
Yep. Oh, I love buttercups.
Yeah, but they're nasty because they don't stay where they're supposed to.
Yes, but mine never I don't have that many, and my mother-in-law gave me a couple, bushes of them, and I had them, and I loved them, and they did not become invasive at all. So it all depends where you've got lilies.
I
I also
suppose.
carried away with lilies, and not the orange ones, not the pretty pinks and reds and stuff, they're orange, and they they're everywhere too, so between phlox and lilies and ferns. And I also have
Oh,
a
you're talking about the wild ones that you'll see sometimes on the side of the road. You grabbed some of those,
yes,
didn't you? Yeah,
sure,
those those tall ones. They're like the green down the bottom and they're big and tall and orange.
mhm,
Yes.
yeah, and I know my husband, we have a little area by a bench out, and he likes to sit in that bench, and he said, "Why don't you in the front of this keep those flowers really short?" Be like, "I'd sure like to," but they have another
What a
idea.
thought, huh? Yeah, you let me know how I can do that. Uh-huh. I'll get right on that.
Yeah.
Mm,
Um, I also, have an invasive species of weed, and it's called nettle. And it grows to be about 6 or 7 feet tall, and if you touch it, it burns, and you it's horrible stuff. It's just awful, and last year, I literally dug out just so much of it, and it was over 6 feet tall, and from a because we have a cottage, and we had gone up to the cottage and hadn't
mhm.
really paid attention to the back of the yard here, and went back there and here and it's like, wow, there's a really big bush. It's like, oh, it's nettle. And so now it's about a foot tall and it's going. And I've got on my camera a place that tells me for sure that it's nettle. And so it's going very soon.
It better go pretty soon. Yeah,
Uh,
6 foot nettles. Yeah,
oh,
that's
it is.
not.
And you don't touch
Oh.
it even if it's 1 inch tall because it will burn and sting and
Mhm.
horrible stuff.
But it's not like poison ivy where it lasts for like weeks. It just burns
No.
and stings for a day. A
And
day, just a day.
you might have residue of it feeling kinda numb or something for another day. Yeah, it's awful stuff. But no,
Hmm.
you don't get, like, rash well, you get a rash, but it goes away right away, but,
Right, right.
um, so
Oh,
I have a problem trying to keep things under control here.
under control. And I look at your yard and I think it's so yeah, a few years ago, I went to a lady's house and she had a teeny tiny little, just a little garden area, probably 4 by 4 feet by her front door. And as we were coming in, she apologized for it and how it had just gotten away from her. She hadn't been able to take care of the area. And I'm like, uh, this would take about 10, 15 minutes. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I have huge gardens, 6 of them. I've got the raspberry garden, I've got gardens on each side of the house, got the big pond in the back, just all the different things.
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, you don't let things get away from you. You just don't. Um,
But I have no choice. I we dig them out. And last year we had a family of fox living in the neighborhood, and they
mm,
proceeded to must have liked my ferns because not only did my ferns overtake everything, but now the fox were playing in them and crushed them, so now they looked horrible. So then I started digging them all out, which I did, and planted some flowering bushes. Well, I have flowering bushes, but I also have 100 million ferns. So
of course
I'm
you
back
do.
I'm digging them out
Uh,
again. Yeah, I could make a fortune if they were worth and nobody wants them around here because everybody my ferns must spread because people are going, "Oh, no, we've got plenty of ferns, thank you very much."
yeah, yeah, no doubt. Um, the next one I want to talk about, I have another quote that I wanted to talk with you about. It's by Alice Seibold or Alice Sebold. I'm not sure which one it is. And she said, "I like gardening. It's a place where I can find myself when I need to lose myself."
Mhm,
And I thought, wow, that's really profound because, you know, both of us have gone through some challenging times. And right now, you're being challenged because right now, dad's got dementia that you're struggling to deal with. And I thought, gardening is definitely going to be a place and a time that you can kind of breathe, I think.
mhm. Yeah, and take your mind off of things, and it does, and I like to create things, and it also allows you to do that. Um, One time I have a pond in the backyard, and, um, dad surprised me by arranging rocks around it and making it he just did a fabulous job, and, I had bought a bunch of plants to stick in the rocks and, between and I went out at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I had all my plants that I wanted, like I said, I always buy them ahead, and I had the best time. I'll never forget it. It was the most satisfying, fabulous escape. It was unbelievable. I just enjoyed it so much. And and not only that, but when you're in the garden and you do something, you can really see it where you're in your house and you dust and vacuum. It looks nice for an hour, but outside it's just such a good gratification,
Yeah.
and it does take your mind, you're planning and you're, you know, you're in a whole different world. You're listening to the birds and the crickets or what, you're just it's a good escape, good
I
therapy.
thought you don't even really need um a garden, a yard to grow stuff in. You just need some pots.
Oh,
You
yeah.
and you don't even need pots. Right now, I have on my windowsill an old gravy boat that I have a African violet growing in,
Mhm.
and I have an egg cup that I'm using to grow the cutting from another African violet. You don't even need to go buy buy pots, excuse me. You can
Yeah.
grow stuff in containers that you already have in your house.
I've already grown plants in a tennis shoe,
Mhm.
um, yeah, in a boot,
Yep.
anything. It's just a lot of fun to look around, and as long as it's got a hole in it, it's game.
And actually, I saved when Aubrey was little, she wore pink cowboy boots. And I planted flowers in her pink cowboy boots. I
Yeah.
mean, they don't last forever, but you don't need them to last forever.
right, right. No, that makes it that much more fun, um, it's like, I guess for me, it's like hiring a decorator, what fun would that be? I wouldn't agree with it anyway, so I wanna do my own thing, and it's especially fun when you find something you go, "Oh, that is really cool," that's really a fun idea, so, um, yeah, and so, like, this year, talking about, plants, shade plants, I've decided to do something totally different, and for years, I've done red impatiens or red begonias, and this year I'm doing white. That sounds really boring, but I've done the white and yellow, and I'm
Mhm,
excited
mhm.
about something different.
Yeah, yeah. When I was at the greenhouse, they have these plants, don't know what they're called, but they have golf balls on top of them, little yellow golf balls. And it was like, oh, that looks like fun, you know? And I
Oh, yeah.
wonder what I mean, um, I've discovered that begonias, I've tried a couple of different begonias in a shade area, and they always kind of like, I must overwater them. Maybe they don't have enough drainage. But I've also discovered that, hey, you don't fight it. You play around, you experiment, and if it doesn't work, you try something else the next year. Um, and I historically always try to save some of my plants. So I have in my house hibiscus tree that
Mhm.
is 30 years old. I've got grandma's Christmas cactus, which is probably 50 years old. I have lots of plants that come and go in and out of the house each year.
Mhm.
But there are some last year for the first time I bought 3 mandevilla vines. And 2 of them I thought they're okay, but they weren't like anything special. So I just let them die, freeze. But one was really gorgeous and it was on a trellis and I brought that in the house. And you know what happened? It slowly died all winter long. And then it
Mhm.
sat, you know, like this, brown and dry. Because then I even just stopped watering it because I don't, I obviously, it was too dry in the house because I watered it within an inch of its life and it still croaked. And guess what? This year I planted a black-eyed Susan vine in the pot with the trellis. I don't know if I'm going to bring that in the house or not. Maybe I'll put it down the basement. I know Judy has a black-eyed Susan vine that regrows itself every year. That one out in the front yard?
No,
No? Or does she grow one every year?
she grows one every year,
Okay. Okay.
and hers is in total 100% sun, hot sun,
And
and
mine will be in 100% hot sun too because it's going to be on the deck. Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
so it should do real well. No,
Mhm.
she buys one every year. Um, there's something else she's got that comes up by itself. I can't think of what it is right now. Um, but that's not it. But
Okay.
hers grew like, oh my gosh,
6
the
feet
whole
tall.
what 9 feet tall. It was on
Woo.
her porch and it was like over a window. Yeah, it was so pretty. And I see, and I can't. I've tried growing them and I can't because I don't have enough sun.
Yeah. Now
So that
you always try to bring those Boston ferns into
uh,
the house every year.
I didn't
Oh,
last.
mother.
I think I brought in two. I still got one that looks pretty good, but being what if they cost like $20, then you try to save them. But I've been buying them now. Most years I've been able to find them for $13 at a flea market. Um, and when you think about it, you spend that money on other plants that you let die. So I'll keep one or two, try to keep that, and other than that, they go. And I do
Yeah.
buy several, because they're so messy. They're so messy.
Because they dry and they lose their fronds and you're fighting with them all winter long. And then spring comes around and really by the time they start looking good again, it's fall. I mean,
Uh,
you don't start
Which is a
making
lab looking good.
babying yours early enough, I don't think.
Mhm.
Bringing it back to
I
life
leave
again.
I leave 'em out too long because they're so pretty, and until it freezes, I'll leave them out, and by that time, let's face it, it's pretty cold, and I'm sure I mean, they love being outside, but not when it's, like, 35 degrees out.
Not so much.
No.
Oh, mother. So we both really have a lot of fun um, growing plants. And yeah, it's something that's what this podcast is about is fun and encouraging other women to live their best lives. And
Well,
I
because you
think
don't have
that's
to be.
something that we're both doing with gardening and playing with plants.
And I don't think you have to be afraid of it. I think some people are so terrified. I remember the first time I took my sister to buy plants, she got out of the car and she had all these pamphlets and books. And it's like, "What are you doing?" And, well, she made it so hard. She wanted to know everything right then and there. And I said, "What are you gonna do? Sit on the grass and spread your books out?" It's just, I just, you go to me, you look at the sunflowers and the shade flowers, and you work from there. And you read
Mhm.
the greenhouses make it very easy. They put, descriptions on their flowers, and so you kinda just go around, and after a while, you just get the hang of it. One thing that is so invasive, going back to that, is a spirea. It's a spire, and I don't know what the full name is, but it's some type of a spirea bush, and it's like it gets tall, and it's multicolored, and it is so invasive that it has taken over, again, my yard and Judy's yard. Um,
Really?
yeah, we bought it as a bush, thought it was pretty, and now we have it everywhere,
Hmm.
mixed in with the
I don't know
ferns.
what you're talking about. So I'll have to come over
Yeah.
and take a look at that.
Yeah, 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 and we decided it has to grow under the ground, so if you start digging it out, you will get hundreds of feet of root, you know? Um,
Oh.
it's really, really bad. Yeah,
Huh.
and they sell it as a bush,
Oh boy.
and how the bush gets from one side of my yard to the other is beyond me, but it does, and
Well,
it's
like my hydrangea bushes, if you put like my bushes, I always trim them in the spring. But sometimes some of those low branches, I will then mulch those plants and maybe some mulch will get over one of the branches.
mhm.
And if you leave it, it will root.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I think that happens with lots of plants. You can create more bushes by letting the bottom branches get covered up with mulch or soil, and
Hmm,
they will then grow roots from those lowest branches.
mhm, See, I would
Just a
probably
thought.
not touch the lower branches anyways, you don't want 'em to be spindly or spiky looking, you want 'em to be
Yeah,
full.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm,
So
interesting.
anyway, Mom, we should wrap this up now. Um,
Talk forever, right? Well,
we
plants.
could. And what? I think what the signifying feature of our passion with flowers, one of the things that's really exciting about it is we don't do anything with our plants to make money. We just spend money on plants.
We're not the brightest bulbs on the tree.
We don't put our years of knowledge to benefit us financially in any shape, way, or form.
No,
It's
no,
simply something that we do for catharsis as a
and
cathartic activity.
we don't
And
share this with our husbands either.
my husband likes his grass. Yeah, and
Me
his
me
trees and his veggies.
Yeah,
And I like my flowers and my
yeah,
raspberry bushes. I love my raspberry bushes.
yeah. When they don't have snakes in them.
Even when they have snakes in them. There were some snakes over by my pond the other day. Two very healthy big ones. Yes. And I did not pick them up and chase my husband with them this time. So I just let them be.
You gotta be very cautious walking on your lawn.
We do have snakes. Yes. And that one time when I found a snake and you could see the outline of the frog, in the body was really, really cool.
Mhm,
That was
yeah.
awesome.
Mhm, only to
So,
you.
am I the only one who finds that kind of stuff interesting? I think
That's
not.
where we separate here. I don't like snakes.
So, with that, Mom, we're gonna wrap this up, and
Okay.
I think tomorrow's gonna be gorgeous. I'm
Oh,
gonna get
that's
outside, do some
good.
planting. I think I'm gonna buy some more plants too. Yeah.
Sounds like a
Okay,
plan.
we'll talk to you
Talk.
later, Mom. Love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye bye.
Happy planting.
Happy planting. Exactly.